Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Onion Soup, the show where we pull back the layers of metaphysics and reality in order to demystify spirituality. Today, we have something a little different, and we have a student of knowledge. We have Mr. Quentin Carter. Now, Quentin has always been interested in the ideas of physics and just the way that the universe works. So much so to the point where he's working on creating a company and a business to help advance our society as far as technology is concerned. How are you doing today, Mr. Quentin?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing pretty wonderful. So, just tell us about how you got started and interested in physics and reality.
Um, yeah, that's kind of a interesting story. It started back in high school. I kind of was starting to branch out. I was getting starting to kind of understand myself and understand things that I'm interested in and I like. And I started to understand that I definitely like abstract, challenging things. Like things that are abstract, but challenging problem solving things. And then I came across physics, particle physics, theoretical physics, general relativity, special relativity. So things like that I was getting into very, I would say fairly early, around 15, 16. So, like I said, like while all my other peers were just learning, basic physics, I was more so trying to delve into general relativity, special relativity, kind of, you know, pushing myself, a little further. Um, and that's kind of how it really started. And from there, I believe my inspiration for physics, particle physics, theoretical physics has only, gotten more. I gain as I learn more, I become more and more interested in it.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's to me, it's extremely fascinating. And I mean, I just love to learn. And I mean, that's just like, just the abstract thinking is very challenging. And that's more like what I'm
What
familiar
books do
with.
you read that involve like quantum theory and entanglement and stuff like that?
Uh, you know, I, uh, I don't necessarily read a lot.
Mhm.
My thing is, for one, I'm always like busy, so I never really have time to, I probably could make time to sit
Mhm.
down and read some, but what I like to do is I like to watch a lot of videos, because it's easier for me to focus. I'm kind of like a person who likes to focus on many things at one time,
Mhm.
so it's like easier for me to focus when I'm kind of visually being, like entertained or informed, and then auditorially as well. So I like to watch a lot of videos on different things. I don't necessarily read as much. Maybe, when I settle down, and then I get to the point where I'm not as busy. I can just like sit back and read a good book, or things like that. But as of right now, I don't read. I don't read as much. Um, but I definitely want to get it a little more into it.
I feel that. Yeah, it's definitely. I'm a very. I think I'm a busy person. I don't know, but it can definitely be challenging to sit back and read a book. But I feel like if you have time to watch a video, you can like read a book. Also, with that being said, you ever try Audible, which are like audio books, audio tapes, stuff like that?
Yeah. So I believe was the question, what books am I reading right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's actually an audiobook that I have been listening to. So I guess this counts. I really don't count it as reading, but
Yeah, a lot of our
'cause I
friends say the same thing. I'm like, whatever.
yeah, but yeah, so as of right now, there's a book called The Master Key that I have been listening to. And it's like a 6 7 hour long audiobook. And just when I have, short times, I'm able, when I'm driving or, getting from one place to another, I'll, put it on 10 15 minutes. And I think that's the problem with me when it comes to reading is I can't really like, when I'm driving, I can't, sit, look down, and take in the words. And I like, 'cause when I like to read, I like to visualize everything that's going on and kind of have this picture in my head. So for me, that takes time, and I need to sit down and relax and actually get in tune with that. And so audiobooks is like a little cheat code for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, the master key as of right now, I've been learning. I think there was this book called Business for Dummies. I've been
Mhm.
getting into that. Just I've been not only I'm kind of like a person who likes to be a jack of all trades. So not only do I want to, know physics and know software engineering, I like to learn business as well and things like that. So I'm more of a like a knowledge person. I love to learn. So everything is usually I'm not really into the fantasies and the different things like that. It's always about information and knowledge with me, which in a sense I believe could be boring, but it's like that's just what excites me. That's what I'm into. So
No, I 100% feel that actually. I read a little bit of everything. It's funny because when I go out and I talk to people, just, regular public, not like in professional settings, and people are like, why do
Mhm.
you know so much about, XYZ? And I'm just like, like you said, jack of all trades. I like to be
Right,
knowledgeable.
different
Not,
things.
and not that I'm trying to be particularly knowledgeable, it's just I find everything interesting. So I just
Yes,
read more and
right.
just get more involved in life, the world, reality. And yeah, I read like my fair share of business books. I have to say my favorite one, honestly, has been the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. It's written by
Wow. Okay.
um, it's written by Dan Cook, and I read quite a few different entrepreneurial books. But the reason why that was my favorite was because I think it's the most relatable to being a entrepreneur. So you have these different books that talk about how to become wealthy, how to be a CEO, how to be an entrepreneur. But when you read Entrepreneur Roller Coaster, really what he starts talking about is you're probably gonna fail more than you succeed. And he's like,
Yeah.
here's the thing, right? He's like, when you start off with your businesses or start off with your business, it's really difficult to figure out the path to take. And people are going to point you in not all these different directions. But just like we are talking with superpositions and how there could be multiple choices and multiple realities, what worked for them isn't going to necessarily work for you. It might, but if you try to follow their exact blueprint, it might not work as well. Now, with that,
Right.
there are several people that I follow on YouTube, and even one of my buddies that I talked to in Canada, he's like, there is a blueprint for certain things, but as
Mhm.
far as there's a key element that makes every business work, and that one key element, even if you follow blueprint, is you. Like you're the person that's going to make the difference between your business. So you could follow the perfect blueprint, but if you don't put that little element of yourself into it, it's never going to work. So he talks about that a lot in the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. Another good one is Think and Grow Rich. If you haven't read that, I have not at this point in my uh, life as a entrepreneur or a speaker or a scientist. I haven't met any entrepreneur or CEO who has not read Think and Grow Rich. Anybody that's successful, anyway. So, and it's really fascinating because a lot of what they talk about in that, and it was written like in the 20s. With that being said,
Wow.
was written in the 20s, so there are a lot of
Old
terminology.
school methods and terminology. Yeah.
Yeah, but it still works though, because a lot of what they're talking about is honestly about manifestation and the power of positive thinking and law of attraction. It's not a spiritual book; it is a business book, but that's mostly what they're talking about.
Right.
And the other one is there are two by Robert Kiyosaki. There's obviously Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is the first business book that I picked up, and then there is the I think it's Business of the 21st Century, and both of those are really good. But yeah, I read
No.
everything, man.
No, no, I just wrote both of those down because I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to really focus. And like I said, I do a lot of self-taught things, like
Yeah.
it's funny, like I was actually in class one day when I noticed like even the professor told me like, hey, you probably would be better off teaching yourself, so like I do a lot of self-taught things, and I've been just saying like, okay, I need to sit down and focus and try to learn business and learn entrepreneurship and everything, and not just be as because I don't want to just be a scientist, or I don't want to just be a
Mm,
physicist. I want to be able to branch out and do different things. So yeah, I've definitely been getting to that. That's why I wrote those two down. And Actually, I wanted to speak on this. Was I wasn't actually really familiar with metaphysics, um, so I wasn't familiar with that branch of physics at first. So when you kind of reached out to me, I did some reading, and well, like audiobooks or videos, and I kind of got into it and kind of advanced my knowledge on it. And I really do think that when we come to the point where we're able to kind of connect that physical reality with this spiritual reality, as in kind of how metaphysics thinks about it, and when we can make it to where we're like, okay, this is factual, or this is something we can actually define as like a not even just like a blueprint, but as something that people can follow. I think that will be the point where we reach a kind of like a distinction, and just like science, and where science can really take us. Because, I mean, in my opinion, I see a lot of connections between just spiritual reality and physics and science, and in general. And I mean, there's this famous quote by Albert Einstein that I love to think about, and for me, it helps me. It's just like the answer to all of the most complex questions that we're looking for is just in our everyday life. So like I think that metaphysics and spirituality and physical reality, the connection, whenever we can find the connection for that, I think that would be a big key. And I really like what you're doing, and everything you have going on, and it's very interesting.
Cool, I appreciate it, and I think so as well. When I, like I said, when I first got into, I've always thought that metaphysics and spirituality were interesting, so I always read about it, but I didn't really start practically applying it to my life until I would say, 5 or 6 years ago. And then once I finished up my degree in biochem, I was I literally, when I tell you this story, this is literally what happened, right? I was about to go, my bachelor's is in biochem, and I was going to go to graduate school to get a PhD in neuroscience. So I was literally
Mm.
sitting down filling out my PhD application, and I heard like what could only be like a voice, and it was just like, look, you can go to graduate school, get your PhD, and help the world, society, change the world that way, or you can create a organization and show people how you went from being depressed, anxious, and angry into a happier, more peaceful individual while incorporating the things that you learned along the way. And I was like, oh,
Right.
that sounds more fun. It also sounds interesting.
Exactly.
So, I went that route, and then ultimately here we are. But yeah, man, like I just started picking up a lot of different books. I would consider myself extremely, extremely self-taught. Even when I was in school or whatever, I would ask my professors questions that I don't want to ask you something I can read about in the book, is my thing. Like when I would ask my
Right.
professor a
Right.
question, I'm gonna ask you something that if I could have just read about it, I'd ask you. For instance,
What's
as we were talking
Definitely.
about uh, not just quantum entanglement, but what is it, Hans rule? Basically, how one particle has to spin up and the other one has to spin down. So
Mhm.
I was asking my professor one day, and I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Why what?" And I'm like, "Well, why does one have to spin up and why does one have to spin down? Why can't it
That's
spin
the
left?
way
Why
it is.
yeah, right? Why can't it go in angles? You know what I mean?" And also, that same day was where we were talking about the spins of molecules. So I was in organic chemistry at the time, and we are talking about how molecules have different spin. The entire molecule spins one way. If it spins in one direction, it affects this thing. If it spins another, it affects another, and the reflections and stuff. And I was like, why? Like, why does it have to spin left and why does it have to spin right? And his explanation was so perfect. He was like, well, it doesn't actually matter if we call one up and one down because they're relative to each other. What we're really pointing out is that they're going to be opposite to each other. So it could have spun left, it could spin right. It could spin in diagonals, but the fact of the matter is they're in indirect relationship of each other. He's like, that's the point that we're trying to get across. But to say that one is up and one is down is relative to our perspective of looking at it, and that makes it easier for us to explain it to other people. But you're right, no, it doesn't actually matter because
Wow.
up and down don't actually exist. North and south don't exist. It's us that created the plane of existence as far as the X, Y, Z coordinates are concerned. We are the ones
Mhm.
that said that this is up and this is down. But what we're really trying to say is it doesn't matter. They're just spinning reverse to each other. And I was like, oh,
That
okay.
makes a lot more sense, right? Yeah.
Right.
And I and it like you were saying, I was that type too to ask those kind of out of the box questions. But just in my opinion, the way that I am, and it seems that you're similar in that way, is I believe that those type of questions not only help you understand, just the overall sum of it more. It helps you understand it in general, just help you understand it more because, you know, I believe some of the terminologies or the information could be misleading to a certain extent. Like he said that, it's not always up and down. So why didn't it say that? It's like,
Mhm.
why didn't it say that? Like, what was, is there something that they didn't understand? And I believe that that confusion, you know, it's always good to ask those out of the box questions because the more specific the details, helps you kind of understand what's going on and truly gives you like a broader understanding of all of it, just in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, like I 100% agree. It's pretty crazy, honestly. Like when I started really asking those questions to my professors, that was another thing that just kind of led me to kind of leave the quote unquote scientific path and choose something different. But I had another instance. I was in I think this was actually a biochemistry class. And my professor, it was biochem because that professor was never there. He was only there for like maybe 3 or 4 days out of the whole semester. The TAs taught that class. And when he came in the first day of class and he was like, raise your hand if you want to be a biologist, raise your hand if you want to be a chemist, raise your hand if you want to be blah blah blah. So he went down all the different scientific fields. He was like, all right, put your hands down. None of you will ever be scientists. And everybody was like, what? Like, why would you say that? And he was like, because to be a scientist, you have to do all of those things. You have to know history, you have to know
Mhm.
philosophy, you have to know literature. He was like, but if you just want to be a biologist and you just want to read about biology, then you won't be a scientist. You'll just be a biologist. And he and another professor, they both said the same thing. He was like, when you get a PhD in the field, what PhD stands for is a doctor of philosophy. So we're philosophers first, and we're philosophers that basically niche down into this particular field. But when you start reading about philosophy, you have to continuously question, the theories and the fields that you're in. And to find answers to those questions, you got to kind of look outside of that box. And to look outside the box of biology might mean you got to go to history or go to literature and see where everybody's minds and theories are.
No, I totally agree with that. And, you know, yeah, I mean, it's interesting too because, growing up, they don't really influence you to step out of that box and like explore, but then once you get to the point where you're conditioned to think this way, and now it's okay, now let's step out of that box and think out of that box. So that's very interesting. And that's kind of the reason why I decide, like, to be self-taught, at the same time, still in school. But I just believe, for me personally, it's more beneficial if I'm, like you said, putting a little bit of me into it, just kind of doing things the way in which, not I deem necessary, but the way in which I know I'm going to be more effective in, and that out of the box thinking. And that's always been me, so like that's, I've always used to get in trouble, like you said, those questions. I would get in trouble for those questions. Like, why are you asking this? This is just the way it is. Like in math, especially in math, there it was always like, like why is this the integral system of this and
Mhm.
that, and why is this? Is there not another way to do it? And it's like, no, this is the way we're taught. This is the way you have to do it. But then when you become, like you said, a mathematician, or you have a PhD in mathematics, now it's okay, well, now let's be creative and find another way, or think out of the box and think about math in a totally different aspect. So it's interesting. It starts to get you to question like, this is the education and stuff like that. But yeah, it's definitely interesting.
No, it's funny you bring up math because when I was taking calculus, for whatever reason, Calc 1 was so much harder than Calc 2. But my professor,
Yes, yes, that yeah, I agree. I definitely agree.
yeah, I was like, this crap is hard. But my professor, she would make us, we had to write, I don't know if you ever did proofs, but she had to make us write the proof of the equation before we could even answer it on our exam. And I'm like, it's taking me so long to write the freaking proof. I'm about to fail this test, bro.
Right, right.
So,
It's like, what shouldn't all that matter is the answer, and that's what
exactly.
I always say. It's like, why does it matter how you get it as long as you get the answer? I actually had an incident. This was like the defining factor. I don't know if you ever heard of like edX and things of that
Mhm.
nature. But this was like the defining factor when I decided to be self-taught, and I realized like, hey, I'm a self-taught person. I was having trouble with something one day, and I was in, like you say, I was in like, I believe it was Calc 3 or Calc 2. I believe maybe Calc 3, and I went to my professor, and I kind of explained to her like, this is the way I did it, but I got the same answer you did, but I got the question wrong because I didn't do it the way you did it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, why does that matter? So then we kind of like sat in the office and we did it my way. And then she's like, wow, the way you did it actually is correct. It's just a little shorter. So I'm like, okay, so my way is easier, right? I mean, essentially that's what you're telling me, and then she's like, well, yeah, but the curriculum states, you have to do it this way. And this is the way in which, all mathematicians do it, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to math, it's interesting, and I like math, but that makes me not like math because
Yeah.
it's like, why can't you think out of the box? And that's what kind of makes me. That's the reason I'm not a mathematician, and I would say I'm a physicist because that's more promoted as a physicist, is being out of the box and kind of thinking abstractly. As a mathematician, it's like, this is the facts, this is how you get the answer, and there's no in and out or other way. So
I had pretty much the exact same thing happen. I was taking an exam and I
wow.
ended up getting a question wrong. And I went up to my professor. It was after, went to her office and everything. And I went up to her and I was just like, hey, I got this wrong, but the answer is right. And she was just like, no, you didn't. I didn't show all my steps and everything. And I just kind of, I don't like showing a lot of stuff because then I get kind of confused. So, 'cause
Exactly, right? You're
so,
doing more in your head, right?
yeah.
You know?
So I could, because it's faster in my head, but when I start writing it down, I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm gonna do it in
yeah.
my head. So I told her that, and she actually didn't say anything. She said, "Okay," turned over to her computer, wrote down a brand new problem, similar but brand new problem, and then slid it in front of me and said, "Do it." And I was like, "All right." So just in front of her, I just answered the problem, slid it back to her, and she rewrote my grade, gave me an A. And she turned and looked at me and said, there are some people, she said, I've been doing this long enough to know that there are some people who BS about being able to do this, and there are people who can actually do it. Like, if you can just do it in your head, then that's perfectly fine. She's like, yes, we have to teach you a certain way, but not everybody brains work that way. And she's like, I don't want to be the reason why someone gets limited or held back as far as their potential just because they're told that they're thinking wrong. She's like, that's how you make progress in science, and that's how you make progress in the world. So, yeah, she
Oh
was a
yeah,
really good professor. So,
definitely. Yeah, because a lot of them are not like that.
yeah.
I've ran into a couple who are just like, no, you're gonna do it this way, and if you don't, you're gonna fail. And it's like, oh, okay, wow, that sucks. So, yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. The similarities we have there. But yeah, that experience I could definitely, like I said, definitely relate to. Just all throughout, just learning and education and things. And then that's when I just came to the point where I'm like, I had a professor tell me one time. He's like, you can go. You go to school and do all this, and then you realize that now you have to apply that knowledge.
Mhm.
And then he's like, but then let's say if while you're in school, you start to apply the knowledge that you're learning, and then once you get to that point where you finish school, you've already been applying the knowledge, and now you have more knowledge to apply. to apply. It's like who's ahead of the next person, and that's when I kind of decided, like, yeah, like I need to start applying the knowledge I already have, and then I can start learning more and more as I'm already applying the knowledge. So I do believe that those people who, like me and you, or the ones who sort of think out of the box or think differently, I think those are the ones who actually, tend to make, I don't want to say make an impact, but kind of actually are more better when it comes to like I said, applying the knowledge, and in just like maybe a job format, or things of that nature. I think
Mhm.
that those are the ones that are like more beneficial to like a company or something like that,
Yeah.
because you know it's one thing to say do what you're taught, or like what you're learning, and then it's another thing to take whatever you've learned, apply it, and make a difference in the company, or the job or the field that you're in, which is, I think there's very few people who can actually do that.
So more to that point, I feel like every you need all the cogs to make the machine work, right? So while definitely I I enjoyed my job in my life, I couldn't work at like a fast food restaurant, but I definitely want somebody. I still need a server. You know what I mean?
Right. No, yeah, definitely,
And
yeah.
get professions or anything like that. But what I'm saying is that every business and every company, whatever happens in the world, you need people that are visionaries. But in order to be a visionary, you have to be someone that thinks outside the box. Because if you to create something new, you kind of have to be a little bit crazy. Like I was talking to one of my buddies, and he has his whole business and everything. He's a really cool guy. And he was the first person that kind of put this idea in my head, and he called me a visionary, and I had never nobody ever referred to me that way. I was just like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Well, in order to create something, you have to have the visionary. You have to have the vision. Everybody else, the rest of your team, they're the ones that help you put the vision together. But you have to be able to have this idea, this imagination to say, this is what I want to do, and then also have the gumption to go out there and do it. But that doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily mean you have to know everything. For ultimately, for instance, what I want to do, the reason why I started this is that I'm creating a resort, and I want to create a holistic, naturopathic type of healing resort, but I'm looking to do it on a scale that doesn't exist. So the same guy, he's the one I was talking to because he's helped me to do that. And he's like, "Well, you don't have to know how to do all those things. You don't have to know how to, code and do computing. You don't have to know every in and out of every medical practice or holistic practice and things like that. You just have to have the
but
idea."
you're the visionary. Yeah,
Yeah. And then you bring those people together. Now, it's helpful to have an idea of those areas, but you have to bring those
yeah,
individuals together in order to build and to create. But, just in the idea of being cre I say you have to be crazy to do something like that, is in order to create something that doesn't exist, that means you have to be crazy enough to believe that your imagination can make it into the physical world, and that's kind of
yeah.
insane.
And then that circles all the way back to what we were talking about before, manifestation, and things like. So it's like in a sense it's all full circle, and it's very interesting to think about. And yeah, yeah, being a visionary, in a sense, is like, it's I think it's daunting to some people, because it's like you don't want to seem like a person who's, like you said, crazy, but at the same time you could go out here and do all these things, and then there's no, the chances of success are slim, so it's like you really have to, and like we said, that goes back to manifestation, and like you positive thinking, and things of that nature. And I think that has to do with, like, brain waves, and things, like that. And because, like you said, that's not, you don't run across many of those, so
Right,
you don't have many of those people who are able to take what they have in their what they've envisioned, or their ideas, and then be able to construct it into the physical world, like you were saying. Yeah, so
right. But then it's also like, what is success? You know what I mean? Like, because people just view
right,
success so differently,
yeah,
and for me, I know I have a few lofty goals. So, but and it's not even that it's not do I think I'm going to succeed. Like I know that I'm successful and that I'm going to be able to do this. That is going this is a thing that's going to happen. You know, but a lot of people success to them could just be, making it to the end of the year without going into poverty. So,
Right.
how do
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, I
Yeah.
definitely appreciate the conversation here. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I feel like I could talk to you like all day. So,
Man, really, like we're having a very incredible conversation. But yeah, I probably should get going. But
yeah.
nah, yeah,
So, full
I'm definitely.
disclosure, I actually did not stop recording.
Oh
So,
wow.
yeah. So let me
Okay.
tell you what usually happens. I can tell you're very like extremely intelligent. So this I brought it to. I've noticed that sometimes I'll be recording with people, and I'll stop recording, but this is exactly what happens right after. Like we'll start talking, and then the conversation is like so much better. So I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not I'm just not gonna tell this dude that I stopped recording, that I didn't stop recording. We're just keep going. So,
Wow.
not that the first
Okay.
time I
Yeah.
wasn't,
Maybe.
but
Yeah, maybe the thought of, like, hey, it's not recording, you become more personal, and it's like, you're not like, oh, I'm being recorded right now, and then that leads to like a better, more interpersonal conversation.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. No. But I mean, I definitely enjoyed it. Like I've been on a couple podcasts, and then I have some more scheduled, and by far, I don't want to deem anyone else's podcast. All of them are great, but just my personal opinion, this is, when it comes to topics and talking about different things, this is like my favorite one I've been a part of so far, and I really thank you for the experience.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It was funny because when I was you're one of the few people I actually reached out to. So I don't usually reach out to a lot of people. But I
Wow.
saw on your profile that it said physics, and I was like, let's just see where this goes. And I was like, I don't even. And my partner who does all the editing and stuff, so he's gonna have a fun editing this because this is my first time doing this. So he's gonna be mad,
Yeah.
but I was just he was like, so what is his degree? And I was like, I don't know. It just said physics, and I was like, but here's the thing though, I'm also very self taught in physics, so very well could we just be able to sit down and have a great conversation. The other
Yeah.
thing is you're in Atlanta, so I was like, that was kind of cool. And I'm actually from Atlanta originally. I currently live in
Oh
Phoenix.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh
But,
okay.
I was actually supposed to go back home this month, but I'm not gonna be able to make it, so that kind of sucks. So I'm trying to make it out there within the next couple months, honestly. I haven't been I gotta go see my mom.
It's
But
cold. Cold, man. It's cold right now.
shit, I'm sure. I'm sitting here freezing right now, and it's like 60 something degrees. But
Oh no, yeah. Down here it's like
yeah,
30. Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah,
cold. It's
man, I
it's
miss it, man. It used to snow in like January and February. Like, I don't know. I've been out here for way too long, man. I'm kind of ready to go back, but we'll see what happens.
yeah.
But yeah, maybe sometime when I'm in Atlanta, I have to hit you up and see if we can like go grab something.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I'm always down to talk, and I love sharing, like these conversations with people who are in the same field, or yeah, you run into some people who are like, like, oh, you don't, like, you haven't finished your degree, or things of that nature, and then you run into other people who are like, more open minded, and then give you the chance to speak, and give you the chance to express your knowledge. So, I'm always grateful of those people who let me express my knowledge. Like I had a professor who took me in as a freshman, like coming in into his office and saying like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to be a physicist, blah, 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 but I don't want to do it the regular way. And
Mhm.
then, he's open minded and takes me in and it's like, okay, I'm going to put you into a task and I'm going to apply your knowledge that you feel you've already learned from high school. And he was very surprised about the information that I've already learned. And I think more people should be like that. And I definitely enjoy having conversations with them. And like I said, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, no problem, man. Like I said, I 100% feel it. Uh, when I went back to school to get my degree in biochem, I actually didn't need a degree because I was already I've been a medical technologist for years. Like, so I already did that. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I didn't need a degree. I literally went back to school because I wanted to have the college experience. My experience before that was very unique. So I was just like, fuck it, I'll just go back to school. Who cares? And like I don't use my degree at all, aside from when I talk about it on shows like this or whatever. But
Wow.
yeah, because I mean, the degree itself is a sheet of paper, right? You can't define. I'm not going to let you limit what you think I know based off of what the sheet of paper says.
Right. Exactly.
But I feel like it
Wow.
always throws people off, and I'm like, yeah, I do actually have a degree in biochem. They're like, oh crap, like really? I'm like, but then people also think that my degree, they think I have like degrees in other things, or they're just like, oh, you know so much about blah blah blah, and I'm like, well, yeah, but that's just
Knowledgeable, you know?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and one thing that really, and I know I said I was gonna like get off the phone, not get off the phone, but hop off.
No, it's fine. Yeah, finish.
One thing that really led me to this was I started researching the billionaires of the world, and I was just curious about how they become billionaires. And then what you'll find is a lot of them either dropped out of school or never went to school. Because what school
Yeah.
has to do is it limits you, it puts you into like this predefined path of which you should know. But in order to really break out and create something new, you can't be on that path. You gotta do something different. To have
Yeah.
something nobody else has, you have to do something nobody else can do. This is a saying that my dad used to tell me when I was younger.
No, no, and yeah, I'm very familiar with that, and I mean, I totally agree. Like I knew this is what I wanted to do, but I know the way in which I wanted to do it, and I kind of, like, you take that leap. You're like, okay, well, this is the way in which I have to do it, and then to have like some support is always, great. So
For sure, for sure. All right, but anyway, like I said, I want to hold you up too much longer. I do want to know more about your business. Sorry, I forgot to pop it up while we were
that's fine. That's fine.
We'll throw it up in like the description and all the other fun stuff, so people can know where to That's find actually
No,
all the time that we have for today. And I want to thank you for coming on. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
no problem.